It was February 2021 in Texas. The power was off. The water was off. There was no heat. The roads were closed because of the snow and the ice. The whole state was shut down for 4 days. I sat in the car with the engine running to stay warm, listening to the local repeaters on my mobile ham radio. That radio was the only way I knew what was happening outside of our block. There was no cell service, no TV, nothing else. It wasn't a hobby for me that week. It was the only communication system that I had left. And while I was sitting there, it hit me. I didn't have to scramble to set up an emergency station. I was already sitting in one. That was just one of the 5 things that surprised me about ham radio. Some I found out the hard way. Some I didn't learn about until years later. Number 5, your HOA can't keep you out of ham radio. My HOA won't allow antennas. I hear this a lot. It's the reason a lot of people never get licensed at all. But here's the truth. Most hams in HOA neighborhoods are already on the air. They're just not advertising it. There are lots of stealth options. A flagpole that's secretly a vertical antenna. A wire running along a fence line. A dipole in the attic. You can even turn your rain gutters into an antenna. None of these look like ham radio antennas. None of them give your HOA or your neighbors anything to point at. They may not be perfect, but they all work. There is some legal stuff worth knowing about. In 1985, the FCC ruling called PRB 1 stops your city or your county from banning an antenna outright. But unfortunately, PRB 1 doesn't apply to your HOA. Your HOA is a private contract, not a government body. A handful of states have their own protections for ham operators and is definitely worth checking your state. But in most cases, you don't have federal backup against your HOA. It really doesn't matter though, because you're almost never going to need it. If your antenna isn't visible, then there's nothing to report. No complaints, no fights, no board meetings. I lived in an HOA for a while. And when I dealt with this, I set up my portable antenna in the yard whenever I wanted to operate, and then I just took it down when I was done. It wasn't elegant, but I was on the air, and there was nothing standing there for anybody driving by to see from the road. Here's the thing about antennas, though. You might not need to worry about your HOA at all, because the station that I'm describing, the one you're picturing with wires and towers and a dedicated room, it's kind of already parked in your driveway. Number 4, your car makes a great emergency station. Your car has 3 things that matter for ham radio. A 12-volt power source, a metal chassis, which functions as a ground plane, and a flat roof, which has a perfect mounting surface for a magnetic antenna. That's the complete infrastructure for a mobile ham radio setup, and you probably already own it. A basic mobile VHF, UHF radio runs from $100 to $300. A magnetic mount antenna adds another $100. You route the power cable directly to your car battery, stick the antenna on the roof, and you're operational. It's more powerful and more convenient to use than a handheld radio, and it travels with you everywhere you go. It's actually a great option for your first radio setup, and you'll probably enjoy it a lot more than an HT. But the real benefit to installing a mobile rig in your vehicle is actually emergency preparedness. Remember that story I told you at the beginning of this video? During the great Texas snowpocalypse of 2021, a base station rig would have been useless to me without electricity. My HT had a battery, but not much power or range. Since we didn't have any kind of backup generator for power at the time, my mobile radio in the car was really the only option that I had. The surprise was that I already had the off-grid emergency communications tool I didn't even know that I needed. If you're still in the pre-license stage, still figuring out if this is worth your time, I just want to let you know I put together a free video course that walks you through some of the most common frustrations most beginners run into with ham radio. The link is in the description. Now, in the last video I made, one of the most frequent comments wasn't about gear or licenses or study materials. It was about this. I passed the exam, but I still haven't made my first contact. I just can't bring myself to key up. I talked about mic fright. What I didn't tell you is that there's a whole version of ham radio where mic fright is completely irrelevant. Number 3, you never have to say a word on the air. There is a side of this hobby where you never have to speak out loud. Not on your first contact, not on your 100th, not ever if that's what you prefer. FT8 is a digital mode. You run it from a laptop connected to your radio via a USB cable. The software generates a 15-second encoded transmission and sends it automatically. Incoming signals are decoded in the exact same way. When you make a contact, the program handles the exchange. Signal report, grid square, confirmation, all in about 90 seconds. You never actually have to touch a microphone. Now, I avoided FT8 at first because I thought it was too complicated and that maybe it wasn't real ham radio operating. But then somebody showed me how it works and I got hooked on it. Here's what it actually looks like the first time you run it. You open WSJTX, you enable transmit, and within seconds, you're watching a waterfall display populate with signals. Stations in Europe, South America, Asia, all decoded automatically in real time on your computer screen. I had contacts in 3 countries within 5 minutes of my first FT8 session, and I didn't say a single word into a microphone. You can even see the contacts in real time on a map using the PSK Reporter website or the Grid Tracker software, and it's one of the most satisfying things I've ever watched on a computer screen. What's your opinion? Do you think FT8 is legitimate ham radio or not? Drop it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious what people think about this. CW, or Morse code, is another option, and it's the original digital mode. It works on the same principle. No voice. You use a key or a paddle and a series of binary letters, numbers, and codes to communicate. Some of the most accomplished operators alive don't actually speak on the air. And none of the original ham radio operators did either because CW was the only option until the 1920s. So if you're introverted or talking is a barrier for you, FT8 and CW remove that barrier completely. I was genuinely surprised when I found out that you can do ham radio without even using a microphone. So you can get on the air without even speaking. Here's the next one, and it's something that most people don't know about. Number 2. You can use the airwaves to send an email to someone who doesn't even own a radio. Your spouse probably doesn't have a ham license. Your parents probably don't. Most of the people that you need to reach in a real emergency don't. Using your radio on the VHF and UHF bands solves the local problem. You can hear what's happening in your area, but that doesn't help you get a message out to someone who has no idea what ham radio even is. WinLink is one way to solve that problem. It's a system that moves text messages and email over the radio frequencies with no internet and no cell tower needed on the transmission side. You type your message on a laptop, your radio sends it to a station that has a connection to the internet, and the message gets relayed out. The person on the other end receives your message just like it was a normal email. They don't even need a radio at all. Okay, I saved the coolest one for last. How far can ham radio actually reach? The answer is off the planet. Number 1, your signal doesn't stop at the sky. Here's something that surprises a lot of people. The access you get with your license doesn't just stop at the sky, it goes straight up. There are amateur radio satellites in orbit right now, and you can work them with a handheld and a little antenna you can build yourself out of a tape measure. A satellite passes over you, you track it, you talk through it, and your voice comes back down 1,000 miles away. People do this from their backyards. Now, it does take some practice, but it's the most approachable form of space radio that there is, and most new hams have no idea that it's even an option. Then there's the International Space Station. It's 250 miles up, doing 17,500 miles an hour, going all the way around the planet every 90 minutes. And it's got a ham radio on board. The call sign is NA1SS. The crew gets on whenever they have time, and sometimes you can try to join scheduled calls with the astronauts. It's a real thing, and it's passing over your town on a schedule that you can look up on an app. But it even goes a lot deeper than that. There's a thing called meteor scatter. A meteor burns up, leaving a trail of ionized gas for a few seconds, and you can bounce a signal off of that trail before it fades away. You can actually use a shooting star like a mirror. And then there's moon bounce. You can aim an antenna at the moon, transmit, and your signal hits the lunar surface and comes back down to somebody on the other side of the planet. Yeah, you can use the moon as a reflector. Hams have been doing this for decades. Now, I'm not telling you to go try and hit the moon this weekend because most of this stuff is on the deep end of the hobby, and that's the whole point. You get your license and you think it's all about using a repeater across town. It's not. You can use a shooting star. You can use the moon. You can use satellites in orbit. You can work a spacecraft with astronauts in it. That still blows my mind to this day. So that's 5 things about ham radio that were a complete surprise to me. Your HOA can't keep you out of ham radio. Your car is the perfect emergency station. You never have to say a word on the air if you don't want to. You can send text messages when every other network is down. And your signal doesn't stop at the horizon, it goes all the way to the moon. If you found this useful, subscribe. There's more where this came from. Oh, and one more thing. In July, I'm hitting the road. 1 year of full-time RV living, checking out state and national parks across the country, doing Parks on the Air activations at every one. The Parks on the Road series starts in July. Subscribe so you don't miss any episodes, and I'll see you in the next one.